It's 2026. You've been going around with a dream of being a writer and author for long enough. This year is going to be the one. But how do you go about starting? Hello, I'm Thomas. I am a hobby writer here on authortube, the author side of YouTube.
Come on, Philippe, it's a shortcut.
I'm not a published author, but I have been working on my own universe every day for at least a couple of years now. That has resulted in me beginning a book, a short story collection, other short stories, 1-minute stories, and a different project entirely. So this is heavy. I know a thing or two about getting started, and I hope to share my experience with this video and motivate you to get off the ground as well. Equipment. I got some good news here and I got some bad news here. The bad news is that you're going to need equipment. Sorry, there's no way around it. You're going to need the right equipment. The good news, however, is that the right equipment to get started with writing is a pencil and paper. And you're good to go. Woo!
I had no idea she's a woo girl.
But yeah, the pen and paper, it's cheap. And I definitely recommend getting something cheap when you're starting out. If by chance you figure out that, writing wasn't for you anyway, and it is totally fine to find out that writing wasn't for you, well, you haven't wasted a lot of resources on it. I myself am a huge advocate for writing by hand. And I do it using these lined notebooks here. As you can see, the lines. And well, will you look at that? I've written on them. And a cheap ink pen, a cheap fountain pen. I really, really like the tactile feel of writing with ink. And it's just really fun to write by hand, I gotta say. You get a physical, real progress that you can see and feel, and that's just amazing. But Thomas, I hear you ask, we live in a digitized world. Why not use a PC? Great question. And I do so as well. This is my writing Chromebook. I like having a designated station. Like when I sit down with this Chromebook and I open it, I know that I'm about to write. It's a glorified web browser, basically. It can access my Google Doc, and that's all it needs to do. So it can't even distract me really, because it's so bad. It's so cheap and bad. And that's really, really great. Of course, you could also use your desktop, your laptop, your phone even. The main takeaway here though is to not get intimidated or wanting fancy equipment to get going, Just sit down with a pen and paper and begin your beginnings. Mindset and discipline. There is no way around it. If you want to write, you have to sit down and actually write. I know that sounds incredibly simple. I strongly encourage you to do it every day. Something, anything, whatever, just sit down and write a little bit every day. Or at least most days. Even days where you don't feel like it, sit down and write. And it can be an hour, it can be 30 minutes, 15, 5, it can be 2 sentences, it can be whatever. Be disciplined. You'll learn so much, I promise you. The cool thing about this is once you sat down, you're more likely than not to keep going outside of your designated time frame. That was my experience as well. Like I have a 15 minutes every day rule, and very often I sit for half an hour, 2 hours, if I have the time. And there are plenty of days where I only write 15 minutes because that's all I can sort of, muster. But I still do it. I'm very, very proud of that. And it's something that you could be doing as well. What I found helped me was to gamify myself. Use a habit tracker. You're going to be building up a streak that you'll want to continue. And after having done that for 1, 2, maybe 3 months, you sort of couldn't imagine your life without sitting down every day to write. And something about the mindset that you need to be aware of. Chances are that your very first story, the first thing you write at least, is not going to be very good. And that's okay. That's fine. If you write every day, you're going to get better, you're going to learn, and it's going to be amazing. Brandon Sanderson, for example, the guy who has published 1 billion books and written 1 billion more, highly accomplished. He has a write 3 to 5 books before even thinking about publishing rule. And it's not that he doesn't want newcomers on the scene. No, he has this rule because you need to learn how to make a book, what makes a good book, what makes a not so good book or a story. And not only that, but you need to learn things about yourself. Do you like the process of first draft, revision, edits, revision, edits, revision, edits? How do you like to write? Do you like to write in the morning, in the evening, in the night? What do you like to write? There's so many things that you need to learn about yourself. Just know that experience on your own is a really, really valuable lesson. And also, don't forget that you're doing this for fun. You're doing this because you want to create something. And that's big. That's something you need to be really, really proud of yourself for even trying. And I know it's cheap to say, but the rest is just a bonus. If you're still scared to begin, I have a little exercise that really, really helped me when I started out and I was afraid of putting my pen to the paper. Find a book that you think is great. In my case, it was George R. Martin's The Hedge Knight.
Sir Duncan the Tall.
Never heard of him.
Do you know every knight in the Seven Kingdoms then?
The good ones.
This is the Danish version. Because it's a fairly straightforward and simple story. It sort of was the style that I thought I would write. And then you take a notebook or another piece of paper, whatever, and you simply start copying word for word the story. There's not much to it. You write it by hand. When you do stuff by hand, you think a little bit more about it. But yeah, copying the text, it'll actually make you think about how stories start. What's the paragraph structure? What's the sentence structure? What about the plot? And so on and so forth. Most importantly, even though you're copying, you're writing. You're putting pen to paper and writing words. And honestly, it didn't take me long. It took me like 7 pages or something, and I was like, okay, I can do this. Get going. Read. I'll admit, this is my Achilles heel as well. I love to read, but I don't do it nearly enough. But on the other hand, that means that I can heed my own advice and begin reading a lot more in 2026. Score! Because much like writing every day, reading maybe every day, but reading a lot at least, have so many benefits. Again, you learn a ton of things from reading published authors. You learn what makes a good book. You learn what you like and what you don't like in a book. You learn about their world building. And finally, it's just good for your brain in general. And you know what the best part is? When you're reading next to your work as a writer, you get inspired, you get motivated. Like your mind starts to think, that's cool. Could I do something similar in my story? I myself often stumble upon, especially world building, where I'm like, okay, that's seriously cool. I'm reading Gods of the Weirdwood right now by R.J. Barker. And in this world, the seasons, summer and winter, are called plenty and harsh. Why wouldn't they? Winter is difficult to find food. It's harsh. It's cold. The weather is terrible. Summer, everything. There's plenty of food. There's plenty of sunshine. Everything is great. And I think that's just like a cool, different way of thinking instead of just saying summer and winter. It's not like I don't just say summer and winter in my stories. But it sort of opens and expands your mind thinking about different possibilities. But don't just read in your intended genre. Like, it's probably a good idea to do that most of the time, but I promise you, going outside of your comfort zone, you're going to learn so much as well. So, for example, if you're making a fantasy book or fantasy stories like I am, it may be a good idea to read romance. It may be a good idea to read history, science fiction, autobiographies, crime, Not all the time, but just like, sprinkle a little bit of different genre in here and there. I actually do plan on reading Twilight because it was hugely popular. I never read it. So I figured, why not? And I'm sure that I can learn a lot of things from reading romance and like young adult because, well, my book is actually a young adult fantasy novel. Just get reading. I promise you it'll be super worth it. Comment down below if you're starting to write this year or if you're just continuing to write. What are your hopes? What are your dreams? I'd love to hear it. I'd love for you to share it with me. If we go over here, there's a video of my experience from writing an entire book in just 1 month. Maybe you want to subscribe to my channel if you want to follow along with my fantasy writing. That would mean the world to me. And maybe even like this video if you haven't already. Just remember, we write our own stories. Bye!